Hello and welcome to another episode of Literary Gladiators, the show where we discuss and debate literature in all of its forms. If it's written work, it's game. I'm Josh.
And I'm Ari.
Alrighty then, we are going to be going over a poem that Ari suggested that we go over, and that poem is Autumn Wind by Steve Sabol.
It's actually a really, really good poem. And I think that it does apply to not only a team or to a sport, but also to a foundation of how everything in life generally works.
Sabol was also the president of NFL Films, which his dad, Ed Sabol, founded.
Mm-hmm.
So, you have a discussion starter?
So my discussion starter, as I had just mentioned, this poem, Autumn Wind, which I will just read very briefly. The autumn wind is a pirate blustering in from sea, with a rollicking song he sweeps along, swaggering boisterously. His face is weather-beaten, he wears a hooded sash, with a silver hat above his head and a bristling black mustache. He growls as he storms the country, a villain big and bold, and the trees all shake and quiver and quake as he robs them of their gold. The autumn wind is a raider, pillaging just for fun. He'll knock you round and upside down, and laugh when he's conquered and won. And it's a very interesting poem, especially nowadays with the way football is working now. But my question to you, Josh, is we know the poem is supposed to be describing football in general. It seems like that's the main...
an ode to the Oakland Raiders.
Yes, the Oakland Raiders from the 1970s, I believe. Right?
Mm-hmm.
So my question is, what aspect jumps out of you from this poem? Like, out from all the things about football, like the game, the coaches, the commentary, what people do, what in football jumps out in this poem to you?
I would say that the last stanza probably speaks football to me the most. The autumn wind is a raider pillaging just for fun. That one, I questioned that one because...
I think it used to be that way, and I think as the sport has grown, it becomes... Like, if you look at the third verse, and the trees all shake and quiver and quake as he robs them of their gold. Like, I think that's basically saying, like, they're taking money from, like, they're not using their money properly and they're taking it instead of focusing on the sport like you're suggesting.
I think that the first three stanzas to me are a bit, they use imagery about the raider itself much more. Granted, this you couldn't even say that this applies to the Buccaneers because the Buccaneers weren't even in the league yet.
Yeah.
This was 1974.
Neat.
But there was this imagery about... at first, you're seeing the imagery of the raider that you can find on the helmet. So you give him a bit more of a background story. But the last stanza where, to me, pillaging just for fun, it's pretty much saying you're hounding on your opponent just for the heck of it. That's the impression I got. It wasn't necessarily... I didn't get the impression that it was competition style until you get to the he'll knock you round and upside down, which that's probably to me that specific line speaks football the most because football's a physical sport. And laugh when he's conquered and won, to me, embodies the Raiders' fan base.
And I don't think this just has to do with being a player. I think it can also apply to being like an owner or a GM or something, especially like
that last line probably makes
that last line does
everybody else, but primarily the fan base.
Mm-hmm. And I think that like this could almost be like in like a story rather than just a poem, because the first line is just describing where he comes from. He's blustering in from the sea. The second part expresses what he looks like. The third is what he does physically. And then the fourth just is like a general explanation of it.
But this is clearly an anthem for the Oakland Raiders. I think that's the answer to anybody's
Correct.
question.
I'm going to correct your sentence a little bit there. I don't think this was an anthem for the Oakland Raiders, and I think it's become much, much more than that now. I think this has become more of a view of how football is in the present time right now.
I think you can rework the poem and it can apply to every other football team, but the descriptions here, I think it's clearly, I really don't think that the only other team that may be able to relate is the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, but I think even still you'd have to make some word changes.
Well, like, a Raider does not necessarily have to be a pirate. And a pirate does not necessarily have to be a Raider.
Doesn't necessarily have to be the case, but if you're using NFL psychology, I think that it clearly applies to the Raiders.
I think when it was written at the time, it was definitely applied for the Raiders. Maybe for a NFL Films segment, and I remember this segment. It's actually on YouTube. We'll put a link to it in the description. But I think it is fair to say, though, that nowadays, maybe it was, I think I agree with you that it was written for the Raiders, but I think that it has become more than that because of other stuff that is happening, and I think it's become like a symbol to the, not just to the National Football League, but to people all around the world.
I would say that you can make it.
We could, I mean, change some words. You'll definitely get that. But the point I'm trying to make is I think this society has evolved since this poem has written. The NFL has evolved and grown since this was written. So I think it can apply to more things than it initially was supposed to.
And the Raiders have gotten worse. But do we have anything that we didn't bring up that we want to bring up?
I do agree with you about this last line about he'll knock you round and upside down and laugh when he's conquered and won. I really like the way this ends. It gives like a general feel as to what football is. That's practically what it is, and whether you're laughing because you're having a good time or you're laughing because you're someone like, I don't know, Aqib Talib or someone like that who like would make who aren't the best players, like it's part of the game, and it just really makes it exciting. And so I think the last line is really up for speculation as to what you think it may mean, but it absolutely applies that the NFL is growing and evolving. I think that is what
I would say that part of it would be true. So if you're interested in checking out the poem yourself, we're going to leave a link down below to it, and we'll also leave a link down below to the NFL Films reading of the poem. Be sure to join us next time for another episode of Literary Gladiators. For now, keep reading.